Thank you, Arnaud, and good morning, everyone. So great to be here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us today. I'm sure we're going to have a great day. A lot of data-passionate people talking, sharing experiences. And as you can see, we have a really busy morning with, I think, a lot of really interesting conversations. I look forward to hear from a lot of our customers how they are using Collibra to drive a lot of success throughout their organization. I'm going to kick off really with some of the key trends that we are seeing in the market. And actually, timing was interesting because just last week, we celebrated our 15-year anniversary with Collibra. So for the last 15 years, we've been living data governance, data cataloging, data lineage. And obviously, as many of you have been part of this journey as well, we've seen the data world fundamentally change over the last 15 years, right? Data has only become more important, it has only become more complex. There's more people consuming, producing data, but also more scrutiny on that data. Privacy, security, regulatory compliance. And we've seen a lot of new ways to deal with that complexity, right? And we've seen new ways come and go, but we've also seen a couple of new trends really kind of sustain in the way we deal with data. And I want to highlight kind of three big trends that we are seeing with a lot of our customers that we believe are going to be sustainable and going to persist over time. I'm sure none of them are going to be really new for many of you, but they are kind of really important trends. First is around data products. Last year, when we had our Data Citizens Conference, we talked a lot about data mesh, right, as a new approach to deal with kind of scaling data organizations. And we're big fans of data mesh. We think it's a great approach. We've seen a lot of adoption with our customers. We've built a community of customers sharing best practices. But of course, data mesh is a number of components. The one component we see getting the most traction, and we believe is really interesting to focus on, is data products. And there's a number of really good reasons why that's so. The second is this trend, what we call shift left with data, or active metadata is another term that's often used. It's not fully the same, but to us they feel in the same bucket, so we want to bring them together. And again, it's an important trend, almost the opposite of the trend around data products, which is much more around the consumption of data. Data mesh is much more how do we get as close as possible to the creation of data and metadata, and do we have new approaches there. And then finally, I cannot not talk about the big elephant in the room that we've all heard so much about over the last couple of months, AI, and especially generative AI. For the last 6-7 months, there's been only talk about this subject. Of course, there's a tremendous amount of hype, but we do feel that it is a real transformational technology that's going to be incredibly impactful. And we also believe that it's going to make all of our jobs as data professionals, again, much, much more important. So these are the key trends that we want to talk about. And if I start about data products, again, what's a data product? There's a number of definitions. We like to keep it simple. And for us, a data product is really the combination of three things. One, the data itself, the raw physical data. And again, could be there in lots of different formats, raw data, reports, even models. On top of that, you have the context around that data. And that's really critical because that's a real difference between data and a data product. And that's also why we believe this data product approach is so valuable, because you make it easy to understand. And then finally, you have the access. How are you going to actually access that data around masking, access, policy, security, and so forth. And the reason that we like this approach around data product is there's a number of reasons. Because what I didn't talk about in those key trends that we are all, I think, faced with today as well, is this need to prove value, right? We live in a different economic environment than 12, 18 months ago. We've been lucky, again, as data professionals, that over the last 5 years, budgets around data analytics have only increased, typically. While again, I've been reading articles that kind of budgets around data is increasing again now for AI reasons, we are definitely feeling more scrutiny around proving value budgets in a different environment. So as, again, data professionals, really understanding ROI, impact, kind of the value that we are delivering to our organizations is really, really important. And that's the reason why we like this data products approach. Because by definition, looking at it from a data product approach, it helps you prioritize and it helps you scope, right? Because the risk that I sometimes see in organizations is that metadata and data is so vast, is so complex, you can lose yourselves in just trying to understand everything. right? If you take the opposite approach, you take a data product approach, you start from the consumption, right? And automatically by looking at and thinking about it as data products, you think about what are the most important data products for my organization, and that's where you're gonna start. So automatically you scope and you prioritize, which is really important from a value delivery perspective. The second reason we like the data product approach is because adoption is critical. In almost every conversation I have with our customers, we talk about adoption. How do we build that data culture? How do we build that data literacy? How do we drive change in our organization to drive adoption through data? And we know this isn't easy. And we also know that the way to drive it is we have to make it simple. Right? We have to make it easy. We have to make it simple and easy for people to understand it. And again, data products is a great approach because the difference between data and a data product is in our ability to make it easy, simple, and easy to consume. We don't deliver code, we deliver a product, right? And there's a service around that product, and a service around the data. You understand what it means, you know how you can use it, you know where it comes from, you have examples of how to use it. So productizing data makes it easy for consumers to actually use that data, and it's gonna help you drive adoption and consumption. And the final way that we like the data products approach is because it's easy to monitor. And you can easily monitor the usage of those data products. And so the question around ROI impact is a lot easier if you take a data product approach which is focused on adoption and easy to monitor, than if you go the other way where you try to do everything, and then it's really hard, or it can be a lot harder to understand what the impact and the ROI is for your organization. So a lot of reasons why we like the data product approach. It's very business focused, very focused on the consumption of data, where to us a lot of the value lies. Now, the second trend is this, like I said, almost the opposite, right? Data products is much more focused on the consumers of data. This shift left, active metadata, if you will, is focused on the other side, is the production of data, the production of metadata. And that's where, given the explosion in complexity that we've seen in the infrastructure side of things, right? Over the last 5 years, we've seen the rise of the modern data stack, which is something we talked about last year. The move to the cloud, new infrastructures, new tools, new use cases, new innovations. But if I ask, again, our customers' organizations, how does your data landscape look like? The answer is typically that it looks a lot more complex today than it looked 10 years ago. There's more technologies, more tools, more databases, more repositories than there were 10 years ago. So there's more complexity, right? And if you then think about the supply chain of your data, it gets created in a business application, ERP, log files, it goes through pipelines right now. Pipelines get stored somewhere to do analysis, whether it's in Snowflake, Databricks, Google, Amazon, or any on-prem database, and it gets used in a kind of an outcome, whether it's a model, a report, and so forth. And I think the opportunity for us that we have as kind of data professionals, data governance professionals, is that where do we actually interact with those data sources? And the way we define data intelligence is the ability to go across this entire data supply chain, right? Do the cataloging, the discovery, do the classification, the lineage, do the quality and the observability, and then the privacy and the security. Now, typically we've done that we go out and we're gonna scan your environment, capture all the metadata, curate it, steward it, and then we're gonna deliver that. But given the complexity and the size and the volume, we believe we need to kind of change this around, turn this around, and learn from some of the best practices that we've seen our colleagues in kind of the software engineering world do, where they talk about how do we shift left in our approach? How do we get as close as possible, as upstream as possible to where the work actually happens? And that's what we believe we'll need to do to keep scaling and dealing with that complexity. And so there's a couple of things that was going to require that. One, instead of going out and kind of crawling and ingesting the data, we believe we need to turn that around. And we need to turn that around by actually having the data sources or the pipelines generate the metadata and push that into whatever metadata catalog, metadata repository that you have. If you do that, it's going to become real time. And that's really important for the active metadata part of how you're going to consume that metadata. And it's going to be event-based, which again, from a scale volume perspective, is going to be critical to just deal with the volume and the complexity. So that's really what we think about the shifting left. The active metadata part is then really important that that metadata that you're capturing, your catalog that you're building, doesn't just become documentation, right? If it's just documentation, as you all know, it's hard to keep up to date. It's hard to continue to drive value. We want that metadata to not just kind of help the people from a data product perspective, for example, but also actually become executable code, if you will, that directly and immediately impacts your data pipelines as well. And if you have that direct connection between the consumption of metadata by people, but also the execution within your data pipelines, it's a forcing mechanism to keep it up to date. But to do that effectively, we do believe we got to shift that around. We go from pull to push. We go from batch-based to real-time and event-based. So that's a longer-term shift, but that's something that we're going to start seeing as in these new kind of architectures. And then finally, of course, AI. I don't think I have to share why we believe AI is so important. There's 3 statistics here. There's probably 10 more that show how impactful and pervasive AI is going to be. But again, as data professionals, we always take kind of a data lens, right? And I think it's fair to say that data is going to be an absolutely critical component to make AI, generative AI, work in practice. And there's a saying, a sentence that I really like, that I heard somebody say. If you think about it, AI is really just a user interface on top of your data. I think that really makes a lot of sense. You have your data, and AI is just taking that and provides a really compelling user interface on top of your data. If you don't have data, you don't have generative AI, you don't really have AI. And so it's no surprise that when research shows that having your data foundation in order is one of the critical success factors to really be successful with generative AI as well. And we talk to a lot of industry experts. It's incredible to see how fast and how quickly this entire kind of world is changing. Almost every week, there's new technologies, new foundational models. 1 week, everybody believes it's going to be those big commercial OpenAI, Google, Microsoft models. The other week, it's going to be open source that everybody's going to go after, and it flips again. But I think the reality is that for large organizations, for most use cases, you're going to take these foundational models, ChatGPT, OpenAI, BART, and so forth. But then you're going to fine-tune that. You're going to train that with your own proprietary data. And that's going to be absolutely critical. It's unlikely that everybody's going to build their own foundational models. But it's also very unlikely that you're just going to take a foundational model and use that to drive your algorithms. You're going to train it with your proprietary data. And then it becomes really important that you understand what data you're using to train that model for. And in the media, we often hear about the risk around AI, the risk around AGI. It's going to risk humanity. I don't know what's going to happen 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. But I do know that today there are already real concerns around privacy, around security, around copyright, around bias, ethics. All those things are really important. And these are not theoretical problems for tomorrow. They're real problems for today that we'll have to solve to get AI to be as impactful as we believe it can be, and it will be. And again, data is going to be critical. So again, like I said, I believe as data professionals, our job has again become a lot more important, right? We saw the initial importance after the financial crisis, when you're in banking, regulatory compliance, BCBS. We saw the move to the cloud. We saw data privacy. We saw big data. We saw the democratization of data with self-service analytics. And this is again going to be, we believe, another tailwind for our jobs again to become more important. And so we as Collibra, we've thought about, okay, can we think of a model, a simple framework of how to think about AI governance? It's definitely something that we've been hearing from our customers. And what we believe it's a part of a broader enterprise data governance model. Because if you think about what we need to do, it's not all that unique, it's not all that different of the things that we are already doing. A lot of the things we've been doing for data privacy, for GDPR, are going to absolutely apply to AI governance as well. So AI governance, it's a simple model. I'm sure there's many out there. It always starts, it's all obvious, but it starts with the use case. What are you going to try to accomplish, and what risk is associated with that use case? And you want to often document those use cases, right? Just like for privacy, you want to document all your processes that are using PII data. We believe that you want to have to document and register all your models and your use cases for which you are using those models. Second question, what data are we going to use to train those models, right? And again, you need to understand what data you have, where it's coming from, what the quality is, who's using it, is there bias, are there aspects to that data that we have to understand before we're going to just give it to a model to be trained. We can, of course, like I said, document those models, document the results, and of course continue to monitor and verify what comes out. And again, if you think about it, it's a very simple model. A lot of that work we are already doing, right? From use case perspective, you're already doing that as part of your data governance initiatives. Getting your data, what is data catalog, data quality, data lineage. Documenting that, again, you want to register your AI models, just as you're now registering you're building a process registry, right, from a privacy perspective. This is not fundamentally different. And I want to continue to monitor, again, data quality, for example. You want to monitor data drift in your models. Are you still getting the same results as you were in the beginning when you developed your AI model? Again, this is very much still kind of work in process, but we do believe this is going to be really important to continue to focus on. Again, how it all kind of connects together, I talked about data products as the first key trend. Well, a great way to make sure you're training your AI models with the right data is to use data products as kind of an input to those models. So, in all of those three trends, what is foundational is really metadata. And it's kind of interesting that for 30 years we've been talking about metadata, right? None of this is really new. But I think there's still a lot more for us to think through from a metadata perspective, right? It is a foundational capability. It's not a use case, it's not something we ultimately deliver, but it's something that we have to get right to deliver on data intelligence, deliver on data governance, and to deliver on these use cases. And what I often hear when I talk to customers is that metadata is a very abstract thing, and people don't really know where to start or how to scope. And I think that's a real risk. And so the other thing that we've seen over the last couple of years, and it's really kind of a different word, in my opinion, to metadata, is a data catalog, right? Again, a data catalog is nothing new, but over the last couple of years, what does a data catalog really mean? I hear it used in so many different environments to mean so many different things that everybody today has a data catalog, but what is it? What the purpose does it solve? And I think we have to be, as practitioners, really intentional about what we want to do with metadata, what we want to do with a data catalog, right? And so we've tried to kind of take a framework that we know from product management, kind of jobs to be done, and how are you intentional about what you want to accomplish, and try to apply that to metadata, because there's many use cases around metadata. So on a list, kind of the way we think about it, we've tried to put this on two kind of axes. One is percentage of your data landscape from a metadata perspective. How much does it cover your entire data landscape? And how much effort does this kind of job to be done require? And the first, and these are not in sequence, and I'll talk about that, but the first thing that I often hear is, okay, we need to understand our entire data landscape. So I want to just register all of my data sources to know what data I have and where it is, right? That's a very typical thing that people want to do with metadata. And then they want to classify it. They want to understand, okay, but where is my sensitive data, for example, my PII data, my customer data? And that's often for privacy and security reasons. Well, you want to capture your technical lineage. You want to understand, well, how is my data flowing through my organization, through all of my systems, and how is all of this related? You want to then track and observe the quality of your data as part of that supply chain, if you will. On a subset of this, you want to start assigning roles and responsibilities. And again, you don't want to do that with everything. Registering all of your metadata and discovery, that's typically where you want to go as broad as you can, because the broader you go, the more value it creates. But if we're working with some of the largest companies in the world, the number of metadata assets can get into the hundreds of millions. You're not going to assign roles, owners, custodians, stewards for 100 million data assets. It just doesn't make any sense. It's too much work, and it's not tied to value. So again, you're going to do that on a much smaller scope of your entire data landscape. But again, be intentional about that. And so then on an even smaller subset, you're going to start really curating that. That's really where the stewardship comes in. That's where you're going to link it to your logical models, your conceptual models, your business terminology, your policies. That's where you build the context around your your metadata. And then finally, on an even smaller subset, you want to create data products for consumption. But again, being intentional about what scope of your landscape you want to cover for each job to be done is really important. And the other thing that's really important is these are not use cases, right? These are just jobs to be done. A use case might be, I'm going to support my marketing organization to help them find the right data sets easier. Well, if that's your use case, you don't really care about registering all your metadata. You shouldn't do it. You should start at the top, start with the data products that you want to solve or build, and work backwards. And you're probably gonna stop at tracking and observing data quality, because that's what you need for that particular use case. And you're not gonna potentially even care about the other jobs that will be done from metadata. What I see when I talk to some organizations that have been doing data governance for a long time, where they're typically, I call it stuck, is in the middle. That's traditional enterprise data governance. It's often not linked to your actual data sources. They do business glossary, data dictionary. It's all pure documentation, assign roles, responsibilities, have certification workflows, but it's all in the middle. It's disconnected from your actual data. They're not actually capturing real metadata. And it's disconnected from the consumption for business users, those data products. And they kind of get stuck in the middle. And it might make sense from a use case, often for regulatory purposes. But our argument would be if you get stuck there, it might be really hard to drive value and ROI over a long term, right? And when I talk to other customers that take more of a technical approach, right, where it's often more for security reasons, there's a big data modernization approach, they just need to know what they have. Well, they're just going to focus on the lower part. I just want to understand my data landscape, profile it, and all of that needs to happen quasi-automatically. You cannot have people in the loop here. Just the volume and complexity is too large. You have to do that automatically, but they're going to focus on this, right? Because that's the use case that you have. So again, taking a very intentional approach to how you deal with metadata, what you do, is really, really important, especially in an environment where value, time to value, has only become more critical. So a little bit about metadata before I give it over to Peter, who's going to talk about a very exciting, if you ask me, product roadmap. Maybe a couple of kind of key principles that we believe as we continue to build out our platform. And the first one is being cloud first. And it sounds so obvious today, but we've made that decision 4 years ago, right? And we've talked probably to many of you around our intention to be that data system of record, system of engagement. Like we think of ourselves as what ServiceNow is doing for IT, we do for data. What Salesforce is doing for go-to-market, we do for data. What NetSuite or Workday is doing for HR, we do for data. There's a reason that all of these other system of record, system of engagements are cloud and SaaS products, because that's the best way to deliver a service, continue to innovate, and kind of support customer value. And so we continue to believe that's the best way to go. Second is our belief that it has to be infrastructure agnostic, right? And again, it sounds obvious, but if you think about going back to the jobs to be done around metadata, the value of going across your entire data landscape is absolutely critical. We fundamentally believe that your data is never, ever going to live in one place. We've tried it for 30 years. We've heard the promise so many times. And now if you listen to some of the new cloud-based vendors, they again promise that, well, all of your data is just going to live in our repository. I don't buy it. It's just too complex. The world is changing too quickly. There's too much innovation happening too quickly. Organizations are changing too quickly. You're always going to have data in multiple environments, in multiple places, and multiple technologies. And if you think about governance, data intelligence, you have to be able to go across. But that's also why our technology partners are so critical in all that we do. We're very close with Google, Amazon, Snowflake, Databricks, Microsoft, all the BI vendors as well, because that is part of a broader ecosystem. The third is fit for purpose. And again, that's really important for us, and it applies in a number of ways. One, kind of you look at the history of Collibra, which is kind of unique in the sense that we started working with some of the largest organizations in the world first, right? The reason is that our initial product market fit we found in financial services. And so I would say probably all of the large banks are big Collibra customers. So the way we've built a product is we're able to deal with complexity probably better than anybody else. Now, what we've seen over the last 10 years is that now everybody needs to kind of deal with data, and not everybody is at the same maturity level. And so for us, it's really important that we are able to be, let's say, fit for purpose in the sense that we can scale with you, right? If you're early in your journey, we can make it simple, we can make it easy, but as you continue to drive more maturity, we can scale with you, right? And we can't, as an organization, apply the way we do governance data intelligence on the large organizations to smaller organizations. And so that applies to a number of ways. One, from a UI, UX perspective, you're going to hear Peter talk about that. I think we have an incredibly powerful platform. I think there's more work that we can do to make it simple and fit for purpose for the right personas as well. We started our journey really focusing on data governance for the data stewards, and that's really how we built the UI. Over the last couple of years, we've extended our personas, the data analyst, business analyst, data engineer, and so again, we have to adjust our UI or interface to again be fit for purpose. From a pricing packaging perspective, it's really important that we can partner with you when you're early in your journey, and it's again fit for purpose and can scale with you as you drive more value and as you grow your maturity in this space. Fourth one is really that shift left, that active metadata. We think it's incredibly important that metadata is not just documentation, but it's a direct execution link to your data pipelines, to where the actually data is being transformed, being changed, being moved. We believe that's absolutely critical. You're going to see some of our kind of new architecture ideas around our next-gen data catalog, which Peter's going to talk about, kind of adopt some of those kind of best practices. And then finally, around automation, right? We know stewards have a hard job. Data is complex, the volume is large. We have to continue to focus on how do we make their lives easier? How do we drive more automation? And of course, a big opportunity as generative AIs, LLMs. We have a lot of great ideas, which we're prototyping right now. We're going to preview some of those today. But it's more than just that, right? It's this idea of this metadata graph, right? That's the foundation to all of our products, and that drives a lot of the automation, right? An example that I always like to give is the addition of data quality and data observability to our platform, which has been going, it's been really valuable, but the power of automatically, again, automated rules, identifying schema changes, issues, outliers. So you know you have a problem, but if you do that separately, you know you have a problem, but you don't know what the impact of that problem is. Because we have this knowledge graph, everything's connected, through the catalog and the lineage, we know where the problem comes from, and we know what's being impacted, what reports are being impacted. Through governance, we know who's responsible for those either source systems or reports, and through the roles and responsibilities and the workflow engine, we can proactively notify those people of the impact. And that's a great example of the power of automation through that knowledge graph as a foundation of our kind of platform approach. And so with that, excited to pass the clicker, if you will, to Peter, who's gonna talk a bit more about our product roadmap, what we have today, and exciting things that are gonna come on short notice.